And the third guy listening to this, Tim, is the guy going, crap, I wish I would have gotten the warning signs. Because he's in a state right now where his partner and kids have already left him. He didn't make the change. He didn't recognize those warning signs in time. And now he's living in a life of regrets. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Powerful Man Show. I am your host, Doug Holt, with my co-host, Tim, The Powerful Man Matthews. Tim, what's going on, brother?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm doing very well indeed. Nice day, team meetings, working with the guys, working on the marketing. Been living in a really cool place of inspired flow of late. So yeah, life is good.
No, that's awesome, man. I was thinking about that, right when we got on our call. I woke up at 4:40 this morning. No alarm, felt good, had a cup of coffee, kind of had some thinking time, and then rolled right into our team meeting with the coaches, which was always uplifting. It's fun to have that banter at that level. And then rolled right into a 90-minute call with the men in the brotherhood, which is always soul-filling. And in between these calls, with our lifestyle, I'm down there, playing with my son. No wrestling, but playing with him in the games. And, you get to constantly hear, daddy, daddy, daddy. It always is amazing. And I just did that right before you and I jumped on this phone call to record. Actually, it's a video call, but so you and I get to record. So an amazing start to the day. And here on my end, on the West Coast of the United States, it's not even 10 a.m.
Boom. He's going to be a pro wrestler by the time you finish with him.
I hope. Yeah, that's what I'm working on, man. What's funny is before he, because he knows he has a bedtime, and like a lot of kids, he doesn't want to go to bed per se, although he's actually really good about it. But usually, about an hour before his bedtime, he looks at me and says, Dad wrestle? Dad wrestle? Dad wrestle? Like that. And of course, I get ear to ear. I run upstairs to the carpet. We have this huge carpeted area. And that's kind of our wrestling match. And it's his version of wrestling, which usually means jumping on dad. I wouldn't change it for the world, man.
Yeah, I bet. Sounds amazing.
It is. Well, Tim, one of the things that I thought was interesting, I was talking to one of the guys who made it through the activation method and graduated out of the Alpha Reset with us. And he's continued on to the Brotherhood. And one of the things that we were talking about that came up is he mentioned something that his wife said to him early on before he joined the activation method. And his life has taken a 180 all for the better. And what he told me was, he said, look, my wife turned to me one day and said, look, you're going to lose me. You're going to lose the kids. You're going to lose our family because you are like a man possessed, just working and focusing on business and business only. And you're not even present anymore. And when you are, when you are here physically present, you're not emotionally present, not emotionally available, and you're kind of a jerk. So I think that's such an amazing gift that she gave him, right? Because so many men listening to this, probably you're in one of two camps, well, maybe one of three. One is you're working like a madman, right? You're doing the things necessary, or maybe you're just working a lot, and you're not present at home. And when you are, you might be having a couple cocktails, and you're a jerk, right? And no one says anything to you. Right? And that's just the way it is. Now, two, you can be in another camp where you're also working just like this. And you're like this guy where you have someone who cares about you that is giving you the warning signs, right? They're giving you, it's like, hey, look, I'm the canary in the coal mine. There is a problem here. And if this problem doesn't get addressed, these are the consequences as I see them, right? In his case, I'm going to leave you. I'm taking the kids with me, and you're going to lose everything that you really want. And probably the reason for this guy, the reason he was working so hard was to take care of his family, right? Some identity and some other things going on that, as you and I know. But that's it. And the third guy listening to this, Tim, is the guy going, crap, I wish I would have gotten the warning signs. Because he's in a state right now where his partner and kids, in this case, wife and kids, have already left him. He didn't make the change. He didn't recognize those warning signs in time. And now he's living in a life of regrets.
So true. So true. And I can think of, as you speak, I can think of many men that fall into all three of those camps, with the men that have been through the activation method and the Alpha Reset. It was funny at this alpha reset. You know what it's like? The guys always have a huge epiphany, right, about where they are not stepping to the line, and how really the root of a lot of the problems is them and their drive and what's been causing them to sacrifice everything to make money. And one of the guys, a different guy, in fact, to this guy, actually had the realization that it was all down to him. And he was going through marriage counseling, but not really giving it his all. And we then said, look, you're going to stop the marriage counseling? And then Arthur, one of the coaches, said, well, Tim, it depends, who instigated the counseling. And then his head dropped further and said, well, it was me. I was the one that said there were all these problems, and I was the one turning around and saying that it was my wife's fault and that she didn't appreciate me and that she didn't understand that I had to work hard for us, and all the stories that the men tend to tell themselves. And then in the marriage counseling, because his wife, she could see, it's easier from the outside looking in, right? When you're in it and you're the guy and you're growing the business and you're juggling all these balls, granted, perspective can be a little bit lost. So hearing things like this, listen, if you don't change, we're going to leave, is invaluable. And it's all down to whether or not you pay attention to those warning signs, because she's only going to say that so many times, right? She's only going to say it maybe one or two times. And it's when she stops saying it, and when the woman then starts to withdraw and becomes quite, distant, and I think the best way to describe it is that when she starts to withdraw emotionally, you've got a real problem, because, usually what women then do is they will then look at all the options, not immediately, but over time. They will then look at the options and look at where they stand, and if they were to split up, who'd be likely to get the kids, and who would keep the house, and where would the husband live, and how would it work with the schooling, and on what days would they have the kids, and women figure it out, whereas men just dive in and figure it out later. So pay attention to the warning signs, because we have had it when those guys haven't paid attention, and he's come home from work and there's been a note on the table with his wife's handwriting on, addressed to him, opens the note and it's divorce papers, and the wife has gone with his daughter, and he's then left to figure it all out. And then you're then playing catch up, then trying to get the woman back, but by that point you've pushed her so far away, you've made so many broken promises that it's just, she doesn't believe it. The trust is gone.
Yeah, and when the trust is gone, it's a really hard bridge to repair. And, when we talk about those three camps, Tim, something that I've come to learn in my journey, in my quest here, is to be proactive on those ideas. They say, I pulled up the stat as you were talking, it's over 70%. That's a huge number, right? So over more than 7 out of 10 women, if you've got 10 married women in a room, or they're divorced, right, that actually took separation, 7 of them at least started it, right? 7 of the women initiated the divorce procedures. That's a huge number. Wow. That's not even close to 50-50 or even 60-40. 70-30 or above is gigantic. And one of the things, guys, you can do as a man listening to this, if you find yourself in one of those camps, is be proactive, right? Don't wait to get marriage counseling when things are bad. Do it ahead of time. Work on yourself. Get counseling, get work on yourself. Recognize those warning signs and pay attention. We talk about also in the psychology of the genders, right? Men and women are different, right? Women have what's called diffused awareness, right? They're constantly being aware of everything around them all the time. They talk about this, Tim, through archaeological research or anthropological research. When we look at the differences in the sexes, is if you think about caveman times or prehistoric times, so to speak, women always had to look out for everything, right? They would go to forage in the land, and we'll use the berry patch as the analogy here. But while they're at the berry patch, they had to always be aware of what was going on around them while they picked the berries. They had to watch the kid. Where are the kids? Am I getting the berries? Am I getting the right berries? Are these the poison berries? Are these the real berries? Where's Susie? Because Susie has to keep talking. That way we can scare away the animals. We all know what's going on, et cetera, et cetera. So it's diffused awareness, always having your awareness diffused across a wide spectrum. Whereas men, we are very directionally focused, right? We focus on usually one thing. So back to prehistoric times, hunting. And when we hunt, we don't talk, right? You got to be quiet. You got to stalk your prey. You have to be very focused on what you're doing. And those senses get honed to a level that allows us to compete. Now, fast forward, Tim, to modern day times, women still have this diffused awareness, but now it's around their relationships. And since they're not in these communities like they used to be, they're leaning more and more on the traditional family unit. And men, we are hunting, but we're hunting in business typically. Now, some guys have broken free of that and are doing different things. But again, if we're talking about a bell-shaped curve with the masses of people being in here, that's traditionally the way it is. And so guys, as you're listening to this, you can bet that your partner, wife or not, your partner is very aware and cognizant of what's happening. They're very aware of what's happening around them. Whereas us guys, traditionally, we kind of become oblivious to it. And it's not a bad thing, right? It's just, it's the way it is. Movies make jokes about it, et cetera. The guy who is completely unaware. And you always hear this about guys when we hear it more, probably, Tim, and you guys listening to this, you might have heard it from a buddy that you met at the pub or a bar, and he's saying, geez, she left me, I had no idea. Or she had an affair, I had no idea, right? They didn't see the warning signs because they were so focused on one thing, they stopped focusing on what matters. And they weren't actually paying attention to the warning signs and being proactive and saying, hey, look, I need to be proactive in the areas of my wealth, my relationships, my health, my business, and myself.
I love it. And I think one of the things the guys listening can do, which is really easy. And, Amelia and I did this on Sunday. And, honestly, it's something we'd like to make much more of a regular habit with, something we used to do weekly. And that's like just a weekly check-in in how the relationship is, Took a few minutes, but the point of it was to give us both a space in which we can feel seen and heard and be understood as well. And in that it was, I asked Amelia, how was the relationship for you this week? What were your highlights? What could I improve upon? And what would you rate it out of 5? And then, she then reversed it and asked me the same question. And it was just a great, I think I lasted 10 minutes, which is a good thing, right? Because if it's going on for an hour, you've probably got more things to improve than than highlights. But yeah, just giving yourself, that segment of time to actually check in, and maybe this is that moment where you can heed the warning signs and make a change and actually pivot. It's very important that if you do that, then of course whatever comes up in there, you're gonna have to pay attention to it so that you don't risk, again, missing even more warning signs. And you can even change this to doing it daily. Something Amelia and I used to do was doing a daily check-in. So at the end of the day, we would, again, ask, did anything come up for you today? How was the relationship? Basically focused around the relationship, as well as checking with each other outside of that too. But just get into some routine is so key to just give that space to connect and hear one another.
Hey, sorry to interrupt the show, but I wanted to ask you a question. Do you ever feel like something's just missing? Like there's something more out there and you just can't put your finger on it? I totally get it. Go over right now to thepowerfulman.com/freedom to discover the system that other businessmen just like you are using. We've included 10 case studies, 10 men just like you who have found the solution and have found their way on their path. And we want to share that with you. Go over to thepowerfulman.com/freedom right away. Now let's get back to the show.
Oh, it is. It's so great. And I got that from you a couple of years ago. You and I had a conversation about the weekly check, and it reminds me I haven't done that in that way in quite a while. The way my wife and I traditionally do, we do it 2 ways. I'll just share it with the guys in case they get something out of this. One is I ask, what's your love tank, right? 1 to 10 or 1 to 5. We do 1 to 10 now with that. And a 10 being full, right? My love tank, whatever that means, right? Because mine's acts of service. My wife's love language is quality time. what is your love tank 1 to 10? And then how can we take it from an 8 to a 9, for example? So if she says 8, well, what would it be? What would a 9 look like for you? And then she can tell me. And that kind of gives me the canary in the coal mine. An interesting story is, Tim, and I'll share the second one with you, is there was a time in our marriage early on when I asked that question of my wife, and her number was consistently very low. And that was the warning signs, right? I had the skills and the tools, but I wasn't doing it. Her love tank was low. Mine was as well. And that's when I looked at hiring a coach. I'm like, all right, I need another coach, or I need somebody. I'm not doing the right thing. So I need optics above and beyond what I have, right? Do the same thing over and over again. You're going to get the same results. So early on in our marriage, I got someone to work with individually to help me pick up my side of the street. I wanted to blame her, trust me, for my love tank not being full. I had a laundry list of all the things that she was doing wrong. I know you can't relate to this because, Amelia and you are perfect.
Of course. Let me just turn the volume down to make sure that she doesn't hear that.
I wasn't. I looked on the outside, everything looked amazing. But I definitely operated from the time, because I've been doing the work for over 20 years, that, you got to clean up your side of the street first. Said another way, you got to take extreme ownership, which is a popular term now, but even back then it was very similar, although we didn't call it that. Take extreme ownership for what your results are, what you do, and who you are as a man. And I got optics around that. I went through a program, hired a coach, and the coach was more of a mentor at that stage. And I learned a lot about myself, and the coach exposed those things to me where I was like, oh crap, it's not her, it's me. I knew that at a cognitive basis, Tim, but actually, you know how it is when someone shows it to you, and you figure it out yourself. They show it to you, but you kind of figure it out yourself as they're showing it to you, and you get that sense of clarity. So my wife gave me that warning sign. And I think the difference between me and why we have such an amazing marriage now is, as soon as I recognized the warning sign, I took massive action. I mean, massive action. I pulled the trigger way above and beyond what I could afford, the time I had. I had 3 businesses. I just the story was I had no time. All my money was invested in the capital in the businesses. But I went all in, and fast forward to today, beautiful marriage, wrestling with my son, baby on the way. But had I not done that, not recognized those warning signs, I know for a fact, if I didn't take action, it didn't work, I would be in a very different position right now.
You're then in a position of playing catch up, right? Because if you don't pay attention to the warning signs, and let's say, the worst happens and you end up getting divorced, then you're always in that position of almost like damage repair, damage limitation, because you want to then limit the effect it has on the kids. You want to manage the relationship with your wife on an ongoing basis, even though you're both probably going to want to end up in a relationship with somebody else at some point. So you're always in this position of playing catch up. And, like you were saying, I didn't have enough time. So the cost to you there in your own mind, may have been time. It may have been opportunity. It may have been growing the business further. But in reality, the actual cost that was beneath the surface that you hadn't yet seen there would have definitely been a financial cost, of course, which, I don't know what it's like in the US, but I think the average divorce in the UK costs about 200,000 once they split all the assets and all the rest of it as well. It's a significant expense. But then more important to that expense is the emotional expense, and the stress and the toll it takes as well to actually then go through that process. You either pay attention to the warning signs and do the work now, or ignore the warning signs, pay the price, and have an even tougher journey after that, because the journey after that is going to be way more disruptive and expensive and stressful than if you would actually just change right now in this moment. So, I mean, if you're listening to this, guys, and, listen, the reality is, if you're listening to this and you even have a shred of doubt as to, how well your relationship is, how connected you guys are, how much love there is and intimacy and so forth, then that's enough to tell you that there's something amiss. There really is. And I've had obviously I'm the one that speaks to the men when they come into the program and the enrollment conversations. And I've had conversations with men that have literally have just come out of marriage counseling. And when we actually get to the end of the conversation, they realize that sometimes what actually is causing a lot of the drifting in the relationship is that the man just isn't there. He's been taught to believe that the way to provide is financially. So what he then does is he goes out and he hustles and forces and grinds and makes money, but loses himself in the process. And as a result, he doesn't have anything left to give when he gets home, either physically or emotionally. He's there, but he's not there. And as a result, in that position, women feel very vulnerable. Going back to your analogy of the diffused attention, they used to do that to increase the chance of survival as well, didn't they? Spread the word around. And when a woman doesn't have that strong masculine, and when I say strong, I mean emotionally present. When she doesn't have that emotionally present masculine container, if you will, in which to have the diffused attention within, then she feels vulnerable to attack, at which point she'll do one of two things. Either rise and become the alpha, which isn't the natural position, or she'll fall and become anxious or depressed or seek salvation in the arms of other men. Now, when I speak to the men and they realize this, they do something that often has a profound effect. They go home and they take complete ownership of how they have been showing up. Saying something along the lines of, hey, Amelia, I know that lately I've not been present. I've been really busy in the business. I understand that when I'm doing that, I'm not here for you. And, when I'm not here for you, you feel like, X, Y, Z, whatever it is. And I won't go into the full version of it because it's a little bit long. But point being is, once they take ownership, what that then does to the woman is they breathe a sigh of relief because the guy is seeing where he isn't stepping to the line and he's seeing it out of his own accord. And then when he chooses to actually do something to change it, that's when she starts to trust again, bit by bit. Because we also see with this particular guy that came out of the Alpha Reset that we opened the show with, he's been tested by his wife numerous occasions. And we see this time and time again. And they get tested by the wives because the women want to prod and poke and make sure that this is real. The change that's going on is real and it's coming from the right place. And it's not just coming to get laid or, to have more sex. It's coming because this is what the guy knows he must do and what he wants to do. And in the instance of, these guys, once they come clean and they implement some of the changes like you spoke about, Doug, or even the check-ins, that you are going to be tested. But the beauty of this is that if you are being tested, be grateful, because you could be that guy in that position who left it too late and he didn't get this opportunity to be tested. He didn't get the opportunity to make amends, to change things and turn them around. And you do not want to be in that position. We've seen guys in that position. It's not a nice position to be in. It's a very painful position.
Oh, yeah. And it's one, Tim, that people don't really talk about that much, right? It's kind of like, hey, how are things going? It's a little rough. And that's all I'll say. But you and I have the opportunity of seeing the true colors of really comes out when this happens and going through it. And it's really, really, it's to me, it is the lack of opportunity and optics of getting that clarity, ignoring the warning signs, and again, not being proactive. We're in such a reactive society nowadays. We are so reactive. And the idea of what is a powerful man? What is a man supposed to be doing? Should be, could be doing, et cetera, et cetera. And most of those visions that you see online or in movies is all around money. Sometimes it's around physical power too. But what brings a man to his knees more often than not isn't the lack of money. It's their relationships. It's the regrets that they have. It's chasing somebody else's dream and ignoring the warning signs that have been put forth to them and ignoring them altogether and not being proactive, not doing the work that they should be doing. And, like me, fast forward the story I shared, of not stepping into a program to help and not doing the things that are necessary. Do it now before you need it. If you need it, do it right away. But even before you think you need it, so to speak, do it. Take action. Make yourself better. As Stephen Covey says, sharpen the saw, right? Do those things today.
Yeah, totally. I think, the thing that I really want to emphasize here is the undercurrent of there's always a belief system operating that you must get to the root of and change in order for you to really shift your relationship. Because otherwise, if you don't look there and go there, you can do all these great things and use the tools like do the weekly review or do the check-in or, whatever else. But you're going to be relying on willpower. And it's only going to last so long. Whereas if you actually get to the underlying beliefs like you did, Doug, and that's where your big shift happened, right? You actually understood, it's me, it's not her, it's me. And this is why it's me. And this is what I've got to do to change. Having those kind of optics gives you the leverage in which to actually make the change so much easier. Whereas if you just realize there's a problem in your relationship and you go and fix it by just focusing on it, then Einstein said it best, you cannot solve a problem at the same level of thinking that created it. So although you'll be going into your relationship and doing certain things, you'll still be operating from the same place that created it. So you've got to get to that root and understand what's been driving you to become so out of balance, ignore the warning signs, and end up in this position, and then change it, get rid of it. And you can do it, you can do it. We see men do it time and time again. And I have every confidence that, you'd be able to do it too.
Absolutely love it. So, and Tim, in wrapping up, let's give these guys, 2 or 3 take-home points that they can take and take action today, right in this moment of discovery, guys. We say in the moment of insight, you want to take massive action. I don't care if you're at the gym, if you're driving, or if you're out for a run or, doing housework, whatever it is you're doing where you're listening to this podcast. If anything that Tim or I said resonated with you, this is time to take massive action, be proactive, and move the ball forward. Tim, what are a couple of things that you have for the men?
I think it's very important. The first thing is for you to come clean and take ownership with the woman in your life and let her know what it is that you are seeing, the ways in which you are falling short and why you're falling short. Maybe she's heard that before. If she has heard that before, then I would recommend going and asking her some questions to get optics, whether it is, what's your love tank? How's the relationship working for you right now? What are your highlights? How can I improve? What would you give it out of 5? And if you've been doing that as well, then you've just got to get some help and support, because obviously if you're doing that and it's not working for you, then you're running the risk of just repeating the same old cycle and that trust dissolving even further. And I assume that you don't want that. I assume that if you've listened this far, then you want to be in your marriage and you want to have your family be together. And if you do, then get some support. And in my opinion, get support from, men, a group of people that have been there and done that. And obviously I'm going to say it's us for obvious reasons. So head over to thepowerfulman.com/freedom and just check out some of the case studies on there of men that have been in this position and have managed to turn it around before it's been too late. Just don't leave it. Just please do not leave it. Do not ignore this message or the warning signs. You've got to shift this. Otherwise, a change will be forced upon you, and that's when it'll be out of your hands, and you'll be handed the divorce papers, and you do not want to be in that position.
100%. And I totally agree. So, gentlemen, it's time for you to take a stand for yourself, for your family, and for your community. That's it for us, Tim. That's another wrap of the Powerful Man Show. Guys, we will see you next time.